Life has a way of introducing us to versions of ourselves we never expected to meet. Some arrive through joy, others arrive through loss, illness, disappointment, or change. The question is, are we willing to learn to love the person we're becoming? Welcome back to Journeys, a podcast by Radiant Grace Productions. I'm Rachel, and today I'd like to share part of my own journey. If you met yourself today for the very first time, would you be kind to that person? There was a time when I knew exactly who I was. I knew what I could do. I knew what my future looked like. I knew what I expected from myself. And then life changed. Not all at once, not because of a single moment, but slowly enough that one day I looked in the mirror and realized I didn't recognize the person looking back at me. When functional neurological disorder entered my life, I assumed I would eventually get back to normal. I thought healing would be a straight line, a few setbacks, a little patience, and then eventually life would return to what it had been before. But nobody talks much about the grief that comes when life doesn't go according to plan. Not just grief for what you've lost, but grief for the person you thought you were going to be. The dreams you carried, the abilities you once took for granted, the future that seemed so certain. And maybe that's why learning to love yourself again can feel so difficult. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't losing who you were. It's learning to embrace who you are now. One of the hardest things about living with FND is that I never know when the next wave will come. Some flare-ups last a day, some last a week, and sometimes my nervous system simply shuts down without warning. Just when I begin feeling hopeful again, just when I start trusting my body again, I find myself back with a walker or back in a wheelchair. And every time it happens, there is a grief that returns with it. Not just grief over symptoms, grief over the life I thought I was getting back. Grief over the version of myself I keep expecting to return. The version who could make plans without hesitation, who didn't have to calculate energy. The version who felt confident in her own body. For a long time, I thought healing meant becoming who I used to be. Getting back to the old Rachel, the productive, independent, healthy Rachel, the Rachel who didn't need help. Every new treatment became a test. Every good day became a sign that maybe I was finally getting back to normal. And every setback felt like losing her all over again. I kept measuring my progress against a version of myself that no longer existed. Not because she wasn't valuable, not because those years didn't matter, but because life had changed me. And whether I wanted to admit it or not, I was changing too. The problem was that I spent so much time looking backward that I never stopped to get to know the person standing right in front of me. I knew who I had been. I knew who I wished I still was, but I wasn't sure who I was now. And that's a frightening place to be. Because when your identity has been built around what you can do, what happens when you can no longer do those things? When you're the helper who suddenly needs help? the caregiver who needs care, the independent person who has to lean on others. Somewhere along the way, I realized I wasn't just grieving my health. I was grieving my identity. And maybe that's why healing felt so impossible. Because I wasn't trying to heal, I was trying to go back. For years, I measured myself against the person I used to be. What I could accomplish, how much I could get done, how independent I was. I've come to realize that living with a chronic condition requires an enormous amount of energy that most people never see. Managing symptoms, monitoring limitations, adjusting expectations, recovering from setbacks, starting over, again and again. Many of us continue judging ourselves by standards that no longer fit our reality. We compare ourselves to who we used to be, and then we wonder why we always feel like we're falling short. Maybe learning to love ourselves again begins with extending to ourselves the same compassion we would offer someone else. For a long time, I thought the goal was to get back to who I was before. I had started believing that the version of me who needed help was less valuable than the version who could do everything herself. I would never say that to another person, but somehow I believed it about myself. I kept treating some versions of myself as worthy of love and others as temporary problems to solve. But God didn't seem to make that distinction. He wasn't waiting for me to get better before He loved me. He wasn't waiting for me to become productive again before He called me His daughter. He wasn't holding His love hostage until I healed. So why was I? I think my last major flare-up taught me something difficult. Sometimes healing is learning how to love and recognize yourself through every version of becoming. That doesn't mean giving up hope. It doesn't mean stopping treatment. It doesn't mean accepting suffering as permanent. Learning to love yourself again isn't learning to love the person you used to be. It's learning to stop withholding love from the person you are right now. The version that struggles, that's tired, that's still healing. The version that's still figuring things out. Maybe it's learning to see what God has seen all along. Someone worthy of love, worthy of compassion, worthy of grace. Learning to love who I'm becoming wasn't about finding my way back to the person I used to be. It was about learning to embrace the person God was helping me become, and discovering that God had never stopped loving her. If you're struggling to love yourself right now, I want you to know something. You don't have to wait until you're healed, until life feels easier, until you have all the answers. You do not have to become a future version of yourself before you are worthy of love today. The person you are right now matters. The person who is tired, healing, still figuring things out. The person who sometimes feels lost. That person deserves grace too. And even if you don't fully recognize yourself right now, that doesn't mean you've lost yourself. You may simply be discovering the person you're still becoming. Parts that are still worthy, still valuable, still lovable. Learning to love yourself again isn't about going back. It's about learning to see yourself through eyes of grace. learning to trust that your worth was never tied to your productivity, your health, or your ability to do everything on your own. It was always there, and it always will be. Thank you for being here with me today. If you'd like to learn more about me or explore more episodes of Journeys, visit radiantgraceproductions.com. Every journey changes us. The question is, who are you becoming? Embrace your journey. Embrace who God is helping you become. And remember, the most meaningful journeys aren't just about where we go. They're about what we discover along the way and who we become because of it.